Happy Motivational Monday. My name is Kira. I am your host, and I'm so excited for today's conversation. We have the wonderful, the amazing Alvaro, one of our neuroscientists, here with us today. And we are going to be diving into how to make your money make you money, or how to make your mind make you money. But part of that, of course, later on in this month, where we get into the conversations around bonds, stocks, real estate, things along those lines. We'll actually teach you how to make your money make you money, but we're starting with the neuroscience of the habits that you can make every day that are going to make a huge positive change on your growth and your money mindset. So, before we even dive in, I'm going to put a poll and a question up on the screen for you to fill out your results from our money mindset series last month. Now, with that, we want to see how your mindset has grown. We want to see what changes you've made over this time, because I know that you are all doing the work as we're here doing these sessions. I know you all are thinking, pondering, questioning. The poll is up on the screen, and you can drop 111 in the chat if you're like, you know what, I really have been putting in the work. And there's also the thing that happens where we do put in the work, but we don't think that it's enough. And those are some of the things we're going to be talking about today, also when it comes to mindset and habits. So we've got the wonderful, the amazing Alvaro here. We dove into all the money mindset last month. We really took a look at the neuroscience of it all. But Alvaro, I sent you a voice message over the weekend, and I was like, we need to talk about the tangible money management things, because I had a moment. I had a real moment. You all know that I've been moving. And I was in, so this last month, it's officially November. I don't know how we got here, but last month, October, I was moving. It was emotional. It was crazy. I just found out the other day that divorce, death, and moving are the three most stressful moments of people's lives. And I'm like, oh, I can relate to that, but I had no idea that that was the case. So in October, I didn't have a budget. I was just like, I need to emotionally get through this move. Obviously, I was aware of my money and I was aware of what went where, things along those lines. But 1 month being out of budget, I was at the grocery store and there was this cute little tote bag, and it was talking about basically like consumerism and how you can make and thrift and all these things. I'm like, oh my God, I love this. And I go to look at the price tag and it's only $20. And I'm like, oh, that's not even that bad. Now, remember, I've said this before. It only takes 20 times of spending $50 to spend $1,000. And I knew that. I knew that in my head. So if it had been $50, I wouldn't have been like, oh, that's great. But I didn't have a mental mindset for $20. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll come back and get it. And I walked out and I thought about it afterwards. And I was like, I don't have a budget this month. There are so many times this month that I've been like, oh, it's only $20. I can buy it for my home. Oh, it's only $20. I can do this. And it's good because it's an experiential month anyway, because I've just been living my life and making big moves. But it showed me how in 30 days, my mindset could shift so much just by not having that solidness and not having something to rely on. It made me be like, oh, I can be frivolous, when really, if you only spend $20 5 times, you spend $100. If you do that 10 times, you spend $1,000. So it all adds up. So as this poll is being filled out, thank you all so much. I'll give you maybe a minute or two. Alvaro, why don't you intro us into some of today's conversation? I want to talk about the brain side of things. And when it comes to building better money habits, what's actually happening up there? Because we did the mindset, but now we need to start taking the action. But the brain is still tied into all of that.
Yeah, I think your real life example is a great case study on what happens neurologically, right? We have this reward system driven by dopamine, and whether it's food or spending, we're looking for gratification. We have a yearning, a desire that needs to be met, and so it's a double-edged sword because it's super important to allow that yearning to exist in our lives. It drives us, and yet uh, when we take action on that dopamine, on something that on a bigger picture is not fulfilling and actually kind of brings us down, our dopamine table actually drops below where it's supposed to be. And that's where we start the self-flagellation and the anxiety and the depression and that's where it leads, right? So such a great example of this. I see it, I want it, which is the child within us saying, give me that candy. And the reality is like, oh, but wait, I actually recognize myself in this loop. And this loop is actually a spiral downwards, not one upwards. So yeah, it's a great example. So basically it's a, the nuts and bolts of it is it's a dopaminergic reaction.
So our body has that yearning, and we can either create a positive spiral with creating positive yearning, or we can create a downward spiral if we either don't have restrictions or boundaries on our yearning, or if we just give into all of our impulses and not really stay tied into what our bigger picture is.
Yeah. That impulse that you talk about, I get it every single day. I live I live in downtown Vancouver, and I walk out my front door of my building. There's literally in my building a cafe named Forecast that has amazing tea, and right across the street is another coffee shop called the Laughing Bean, which is like, the cheers of the neighborhood. Everybody hangs out, and they have like unbelievable coffee and cinnamon buns. And so I walk out and I get the double whammy, right? My brain looks and sees, I know it, I want it. That's yearning and that's immediate. And the reality is, if I go across the street and I spend the $12 to $15 getting a cinnamon bun and a coffee, I'll have momentary pleasure, and then I'll feel both physically not great because a cinnamon bun is not ideal, uh, and I'll say, did I really need to spend $12? And you think nothing of it, but that's my Mexico vacation right there. That's $300 a month. That's $3,600 a year. That's a really nice weekend in Mexico for me.
I want that weekend in Mexico, especially with those mountains in the background there.
Yeah, well, that's
For
the
those
other dopaminergic reaction you can have. I can look and I can say, "Oh wow, look at that! There's right there. That's some fresh snow up there. I want that." It costs me to drive up there, and that's it. And then I can just walk around, and I
Mm.
get way more fulfillment. That's the kind of loop that we want to create and we want to have in our lives. So splurge every once in a while and treat yourself to the cinnamon bun and the coffee or the bag. And most of the time, do that.
It's true. For those of you filling out the poll, I'm ending it now. Thank you so much for your feedback. And we're so excited to see how much you all have grown, where you've grown and evolved over this time. So, Alvaro, this is such an important conversation because one, it's the conversation that yearning is important and it is biologically necessary for us. We have to have that yearning. But what do we yearn for, right? Do we yearn for me, I used to shop a lot out of boredom. Alvaro and I have talked individually about how most people are spending out of boredom. So many of the shopping apps, if you look at them, they're designed like social media. They're designed to keep you scrolling and looking and thinking about spending. And we can start switching that. So for me, when I started my financial well-being journey, I started reading books a lot more and going to coffee shops where I could get a $5 tea and read my book for 3 hours instead of going into TJ Maxx where it was guaranteed that I was going to spend at least $100 every time I stepped into there. It's just too easy. And it felt satisfying and gratifying knowing that I'm removing my distractions and I'm also doing things that make me feel better and grow. So, with that conversation, Alvaro, I know a lot of us know what to do with money in theory, but we don't always do that. Why is that? And what's going on in our brains when we say we'll budget or we'll save more money, and then we buy the latte or the purse or the side by side anyway?
So, not to get into the psychology of it, of regression and all that, it's pretty simple. From the time we're born, even before in uterus, um, the wiring begins and it continues. And in our first 5 years of life, it's it's as much connection as it is pruning. There's a lot of things. It's just a baby. You see a baby and they can't control the influx of information. The brain needs to prune in order to stay sane. And so in the first 5 years of life, there's a lot of connections being made and a lot of connections being unmade. So there's wiring and unwiring happening. As we get older, we start getting into more settled state. Well, those highways of instant gratification, particularly in North America, are extremely, extremely well developed. So when you go to your local Safeway, your local grocery store, they have spent a gazillion dollars priming you to shop. So if you go hungry, you are screwed. You're going to buy a whole bunch of stuff you don't need. And how do they do it? They put music on. They choose the color schemes. They place certain items in certain places knowing that the impulse buy is going to happen. And so they study this to the nth degree in order to manipulate us into the consumerism that we exist in today. And that's tied in with the Food and Drug Administration that allows the sugar industry to make sure that we stay addicted to sugar. And so in any given Safeway, you're guaranteed to have 90% of the products with added sugar in it. If you don't do a perimeter walk and then get out, you're done for. So it's a little bit of internal awareness of having developed these paths early in your life, in growing up, and understanding that neurologically, even though you know logically better, educationally better, why it is that you can't help yourself. You can't help yourself because your neural system is saying, I want it, and you will talk yourself into getting it.
Hmm. Wow. It's a lot. It's a lot. So there's the reality that we have actually been studied as humans, and the way that we make purchases, the way that we consume, and the easiest ways to get us to consume are actively being used and engaged every day. Drop 222 in the chat if you were like, oh, what happened to me the other day? Whatever. Drop 222 in the chat if you were talking about like this cool record that you had from the 80s of this cool band, right? And then all of a sudden the next day you're on Instagram and you're getting an ad for that same band and you're like, what's happening? They know, right? They know that we're really good at consuming because they've made us really good at consuming. And I don't think there's inherently a problem with that, but we do start getting so many 222s. So many of you relate. I'm not alone. But we all go through that, right? So we know that the marketing is being targeted specifically to us. What do we do with that? Now that we know that there's a decent amount of this out of our control, we do have our own, all of this that's happening inside, we do have some control over. So you and I, Alvaro, have talked about the saying that to eat the elephant one bite at a time. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You can't eat it all at once. So when it comes to our finances, what does this actually look like in real life to start counteracting so many of the things that are just happening naturally in our society when it comes to how we consume and spend our money? What can we do with and through ourselves to start having healthier actual habits?
Well, it's going to sound hilarious. We think about these things and we're looking for concrete actions, right? Put your credit card in the freezer, put it in a bag in a freezer, right? Do the math on what that coffee could buy you if you didn't have it every day, right? Like I just did with Mexico and stuff like that. Those are all great. They're great little hacks. But here's the reality. What you're asking, how do I rewire my brain? How do I shift so that my reaction, the domino effect of being out in society, is different? And funny enough, it has zero to do with purchasing and zero to do with money. It has to do with daily hygiene. And what I mean by that is if you're not sleeping 8 hours a night and you're not experiencing the sunrise and the sunset, you're already off kilter. If you're not drinking enough water, you're already off kilter. So here's an example. Water, 80% of the time that we think we're hungry, we're actually thirsty. And we're not thirsty for tea or Coca-Cola or whiskey. We're thirsty for water. By the time you feel thirst, it's already too late. So can you imagine, I ask the audience this. If you were to actually drink 8 glasses of water, 8 glasses of water a day, how hungry would you be? If you take a full glass of water down, are you still hungry? Well, if you're not, then you're not buying that chocolate bar. You're not buying the bag of chips. You're not buying the 2 liter Coca-Cola. You're not buying. So just by taking care of yourself in those two things, sleep and water, your habits will change. And that's what we're talking about. When Kira and I talk about how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time, we need to educate ourselves. That's the first little bite. That's the baby step. Saying, I look at my life and I'm overwhelmed and I'm tired and I'm falling asleep at 2 in the afternoon. What can I do to change? And you sleep properly with the sunrise and the sunset and drink water, and already you're on your way.
You said something before about how it's so easy to think about how we're going to save money or do all of these things, but there's a difference between the intellectualized idea of things versus the actual real lived experience. It's why we could be in a really crappy friendship or relationship, and our friends and family are like, oh my God, get the heck out of there. And we can't because our emotions are tied in. But as soon as we see our friend in a crappy situation, we're like, you must get out of there because we know we're not emotionally tied into it. And with these experiences, the way we spend our money is emotional. It is very much tied back to the ways that we give ourselves care in a lot of ways. So when you start looking at money, the way that we spend money, we want to think about it, right? I think there's a natural desire to intellectualize all of this, but the truth is that we have a body and we have a brain that are running the show so much more than our thoughts are. Because how many times have you thought about what your life is going to be, and then the reality is incredibly different? It's because we have a body and a brain that are actually living it. We have a mind that's thinking it. So when Alvaro is saying, drink water and sleep, it is not to go underrepresented and it is not to go missed how significant that is. And if you want to dive a little bit deeper into the science, most people, 90% of the world is chronically dehydrated, which when you're dehydrated, your body is in a sympathetic state, which means you're in fight or flight. You might be stressed out and not know what to do with your money just because your body physically doesn't have what it needs. I don't know if you've ever been in a point in your life when you realized I didn't have what I needed, whether it was shelter or home or care or love. And there's this level of like ferocity that comes to you of like, I need to solve this right now. That is meant to be reserved for when you're in a stressful situation. That's not where you're supposed to be all day, every day. But most people are there all day, every day, and they're making decisions all day, every day based on a survival mechanism that they could take care of. So when you start drinking water, when you start sleeping, your body goes into the parasympathetic, which is your rest or digest. That's where you're able to actually respond to life instead of react to life. So the response to life for Kira in the past would be go shopping, see the cute thing, buy it. No, my reaction to life, go shopping, see the cute thing, buy it. My response to life now is go shopping, see the cute thing, look at my budget, see if it's worth the value of my budget, and then maybe make the purchase. Or a lot of the times I think about it and then forget about it and never come back to it. But I still get the satisfaction of looking at cute, pretty things. But I'm not in a frenzy to solve some sort of problem happening biologically in my body that my thoughts can't rationalize. I'm in a grounded, more able to decide and support myself state. So I really, when we're talking about healthy habits, please, it's so easy to underrate drinking water. It's so easy to underrate sleeping well. It's so easy to underrate working out. What if instead of going shopping or buying all the food, you went to a cool gym class that was something that you actually enjoyed? There's so many ways to be active.
You know what's coming up for me, Kira? I love this, and here's something that we could challenge ourselves on in this group to do over the next week as we move forward. Can you imagine yourself carrying a nice big water bottle, And when you see that tote bag or when you see that thing that you want to buy, you'll have a sip of water and listen to yourself and feel what happens. Because as Kira said, we're emotional beings. Our decisions are emotionally based. We have an emotional construct, and that's what drives. And so that pause to take a sip of water will probably calm us down and allow us to connect the dots in the moment. We'll be present to the moment saying, ah, I'm drinking water because I have an impulse to buy something. And that, just that little gap, that little fresh breath of air would probably help us reconsider. Do I really need it? Do I really want it? Or is there something else happening here? So that'd be really cool. Let's mix the two, right?
Yeah, I'm actually going to try that this week too and see what happens. But for all of you who are starting this journey, how do you eat an elephant? One step at a time. If you're not sleeping right and drinking enough water, let's not move on to the bigger things. Teach yourself how to respond. What Alvaro just taught us is how to put our body in a natural state of response and inquisitiveness instead of frenzy and reaction. So, if someone's feeling overwhelmed and has no idea where to start on their money management journey, what's the first bite that you recommend them start taking?
I think that's, it's not to promote life guides and to promote life guides.
Please promote us. Absolutely. Everyone should know how great we
Well,
are.
it's just that's why we're here, right? We're here to learn what is the value of life guides, and the motivational Mondays. How does all this tie into life guides? And for me, as a guide, and as somebody who's used life guides, the baby step I would want to take is to name what it is. And the way we do that is by speaking it out loud with others. So having the vulnerability to show up and have a session with the life guide and actually say, I have a journey I want to go.
Mm.
Yeah, so having the vulnerability to actually articulate, find the words, and share with others uh, is amazing. And you want a safe space to do that, and you want a focused, intentional space to do that. So I think that the first step I would take is just book a session. Just book a session and set the intention that you're going to talk about yourself and your relationship to consumption. Not even to money, just to consumption, because it'll impact a whole bunch of different parts of your lives. Your diet, uh, the consumption of friendships. We're social beings, and now we have this whole thing called social media and 100 different ways to connect with people, and we're stuck on our phones. We're addicted to our phones. That's all consumption, and so make a promise to yourself. Book right now, get a life guide, and see where that can take you. That conversation can take you. That's a bite size.
So beautiful. Yeah, you don't have to know. This is the thing, right? We've got A and we've got Z. We are at A right now, and we know that Z is where we want to get to go, but we don't know B through Y. Someone will help us figure out the B to Y as we start getting into the place of being like, okay, I seriously want to work on this. By this time next year, I don't want to be stressed about money. By this time next year, I want a good holiday budget. By this time next year, I actually want to convince my family to go on a European trip for the holidays instead of buying each other ridiculous gifts. So many different things you could do. I am dropping Alvaro's profile in the link or in the chat for you to be able to book a call with him. We also have many other life guides. If you go to app.lifeguides.com, um, is where you'll be able to find us. There's not a Life Guides app currently. It is in the making. Our engineering team is working tirelessly on it. So coming soon to an app store near you. So one last thing, Alvaro, I know I wanted to really touch a little bit on budgeting and what it does to healthily restrict, well, one, to take account of our money, but then two, to healthily restrict our money and what that does to our brain in regards to satisfaction and how setting a goal, right, with our budget and then meeting that, how that can create such positive rewards moving forward.
So, quite a few of you have probably heard this phrase of um, having no plan is a plan to fail.
Mm.
And so, why is that? It is because neurologically, again, the amygdala is looking for what it recognizes and what it knows, or what it doesn't know and it doesn't recognize. And when we are in the area of I don't know it, um, and I don't recognize it, and I'm not sure if I want it or not, it makes it extremely challenging to work with your emotional construct in a positive way. If you've pre-planned and role played what happens and what you're trying to achieve, then what you're doing is priming yourself for a dopaminergic reaction of I did it, right? So it's like when you get up in the morning and the first thing you do is you put on your runners and you go for a walk. Even if it's raining out or it's cold, and you go and you come back and you get out there and you go, why am I doing this? This is miserable out here. And yet we come home, we walk in the door, and for some reason we feel good. Myself, I played with my family with a giftless Christmas for 3 seasons. 3 Christmases, no gifts. And the only gifts we would give to each other are experiences. And it was amazing. And now we've been able to reintroduce gifts in a totally healthy way.
Beautiful. Oh my gosh, I love it. So we get to have the satisfaction of reaching our goals when we set a budget, and it's such an easy way to do so. So if you're on this call and you're like, I've never had a budget, I don't know what's in my bank accounts, I kind of just want to get started on my financial well-being journey, that's where a guide gets to help you. Because I started all of this $30,000 in debt living with my mother, and now I'm completely debt-free and I live in a beautiful apartment, very similar to Alvaro. I can walk outside, get a coffee, get all the stimulation and social interaction, and all of the temptation. But this is real. And after a month of not having a budget, I realized that my budget has allowed me to gamify my money. It's allowed me to look at where I can test myself a little bit more, the ways that I can live on a little bit less, and the ways that that supports me for my future and the future businesses that I want, the future homes that I want, the future generations that I plan on building. I know that I'll have the financial foundation to support that. So, Alvaro, we have about 30 seconds left. Do you have any final words for today's session?
Absolutely. So today's session, guys, was a total segue into our next session, which is where the rubber starts hitting the pavement. What we're talking about here is there's a choice. You can go back to the way you normally hear it in society, willpower and discipline. And you can self-flagellate yourself into responsible fiscal management, following all the hacks and tricks you see in books, magazines, on TikTok, or whatever. There is another road that is quickly emerging in society, and that is a neuroscientific road in which you rewire your brain. You invite your curiosity and you invite your experience to shift who you are fundamentally. And so the dopaminergic reaction that you get automatically leads to the effect of having fiscal management. That becomes the thing. I'll give you an example, an extreme example, addiction. The easiest way to fix an addiction is to replace the addiction. This is why so many alcoholics and drug addicts become marathon runners and mountain climbers and do these crazy, wacky things. They know that their body needs that adrenaline rush and they get it elsewhere. And that's what I'm saying here. You have a choice of beating yourself into fiscal management or rewiring yourself towards it. And that's what we're
So
going to
that
talk
is
about.
next Monday. Exactly. That is next Monday's Motivational Monday. You have Alvaro and I again, which is going to be very exciting. I dropped the link in the chat for you all to register for that. And I hope this week if you're out and about, you at least bring your water with you. I hope you start thinking about sleep as a big, huge foundation for your own money management. And we will see you next week for talking about how the rewiring for wealth. Sending you all lots and lots of love. Have a beautiful Monday and we'll talk soon. There's a survey at the end. Don't forget to fill that out. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys.